Africans have a culture. All people have a culture. And if you look at all societies, they have an innate tendency to go from smaller social aggregates to larger social aggregates. From the family, to the clan, to the tribe, to the village, to the nation, to the continent. They all have this, and this innate process is an evolutionary process. Africa herself, just like every other society, just like every other continent, has this innate tendency, which was pursuing an evolutionary path, going from the family, to the clan, to the tribe, to the village, to the nation, to the continent. This innate evolutionary process was interrupted. It came to a screeching halt by capitalism, its offshoots, colonialism, and slavery. Now you must understand, Africa was developing herself on this evolutionary process, going to larger social aggregates, where we would have on our own, on an evolutionary process, arrive at continental unity. This process was stopped by colonialism and slavery, one of the worst holocausts that humanity has ever seen. 300 million of Africa's young and Africa's strong were taken out of the continent through the most violent means that humanity has seen. Over 100 million were killed, and the other 200 million where their labor was used to build European imperialism. This has affected Africa seriously. But Africa has this will, and you must not think that because imperialism comes to suppress this will, that the will dies away or diminishes. On the contrary. Melville Herskovitz, in his book, The Myth of the Negro Past, and Non-African, shows us that when African culture is suppressed, it becomes more resilient, it becomes more insistent, it becomes more resistant in its will and its determination to arrive at its objective. Thus this evolutionary process, which has been stopped, this natural process which we had towards continental unity, this process is not diminished. As a matter of fact, it's become more intensified among the people, and we will arrive at this continental unity, but we can no longer arrive at it through an evolutionary process. The only possible process now is a revolutionary process. We must understand that this revolutionary process is not because we like revolution, but it has been imposed upon us by the historical forces. And this revolutionary process must be anti-capitalist in nature and character. If it is not anti-capitalist, it will further divide Africa, because it is capitalism that stopped Africa's unified evolutionary process. This must be properly understood, and we said that in this process for unity, the people of Africa have a stronger will. It was in line with this that we made our comments last year when we said that you can look at this evolutionary process, this innate will for unity, continental unity, not even by looking at Africa, but looking at Europe. Europe today speaks everywhere of continental unity. As a matter of fact, they wish to ensure us that by 1992, they will have the structural basis in place for a continental-wide government in Europe. Thus Europe, whose wars has scarred the world, Europe, who more than any other continent has been divided among itself, if they speak of European continental unity, one of us whose process had been stopped. And we said, and we repeat, that Europe will never arrive at continental unity before Africa. Africa will be the first. Our basis for saying this is not chauvinistic. It's based on material reality and scientific fact. Yes. We are told by European bourgeois historians and some backward Africans that one of the reasons that Africa will not unite is because of tribal warfare. They tell us that our tribal warfare is everywhere. And you know, we have 1,800 languages in Africa. Give yourself a hand. Secretary says, you can get the top intellectuals of any country. Put them anywhere in the country they're most relaxed. Give them everything you want to give them. Ask them to develop a language. They will never do it. Language is developed only by the people. And we have given the world 1,800 languages. You can see the wealth of our culture here. They tell us that we will not unite because these groups are always fighting each other. Every time they get a chance, they fight each other. If Africa will not unite because of tribal warfare, Europe can never unite because their tribal warfare has scarred the world. I mean, if we have tribal warfare, we just keep it in Africa. But they take their tribal warfare among themselves all over the world. In the island where I was born, in Trinidad, the French fought the British, fought the Portuguese, fought the Italians, fought the Spanish. Everybody among themselves fighting each other for spots all over the world. As a matter of fact, just the French citizens killed by Germany alone, all of African tribal warfare does not equal this number. Which that is no way possible. Secondly, just in the political area, it is clear. You know, we as a people have, at this time, in our leadership and those in authority, I mean, we look as if we have a monopoly of corrupt leaders. I mean, we have nothing but the scum in place of power everywhere. All they care about is getting individual luxury in the midst of mass suffering at the expense of mass suffering. Everywhere you can see them, they have no love for the people. All they're concerned about is lining their pockets. They don't care. All of them, from the United States all the way to Zambia, South Africa. We have corrupt leadership. But as corrupt as they are, as backward as they are, receiving direct money from the enemy to keep us divided, none of them can ever come before the people and tell us that they're against African unity or they're against African people coming together, even though they're actively working for it. Even Mobutu can never come before the people and say, I'm against African unity. He can say, well, we need to go slow. We need to take time. We need to watch this one. We don't speed up the process. We want to make sure it's sure. But he can never come and say he's against it. No. But if you would listen to your television, your radio, read your newspapers, every day a European leader comes before the people of Europe and rationally explains why European continental unity is against some aspect of their policy. It'll be bad for agriculture. It's no good for tariffs. It will wipe out our industry in tourism. And they come and discuss it properly, whether it's Mitterrand, whether it's Major or Thatcher or any of them. You can hear them really discussing rationally this aspect of not having continental unity. No African leader, not even the puppet directly on the string of U.S. imperialism, can come before the masses of Africa and say this. And finally, in the cultural field, the mass cultural field, you will see it. Here you will see it clearly. I've heard songs sung to Europe. I've heard songs sung to France. I've heard songs sung to Germany. I've heard songs sung to England. But I've never heard one song sung to Europe. The songs I've heard sung about Africa, I could start with Bob Marley alone. And among the cultural aspect, this need for unity, I have never seen anybody wear a map of Europe around their neck. So you must understand the intense desire that you have for your unity. And the only way we can understand that is when we look at our culture. And when we come to understand that our culture is not only different from American capitalist culture, it is direct conflict with it. When we understand that, we can never call ourselves African Americans, or we could call ourselves as Africans in America, no matter how we act. The job of the enemy is to confuse us and make us think that our history, our culture, and our interests are one and the same. But Malcolm told us a long time ago in our party, we live Malcolm X. We live Malcolm X. Malcolm said, whatever the enemy is for, you must be against. Whatever he's against, you must be for. So we've had our directions a long time ago, man, about what's your position on the war. Malcolm told me a long time ago. And for Malcolm, he was strong enough to tell the whole world, if I'm the Imam of Mecca, and American imperialism is fighting the devil, as Africa is my mother, I'm Satan's comrades in arms. I'll join the devil against America. Therefore, for us, there's no discussion here. America talking about morality. America talking about morality is like a thief giving lectures on honesty. We have to know our culture. We must look at our culture. We say that African process of unification has been interrupted and stopped, but this process must continue. And the stopping point must be clear to you. 300 million were taken out of Africa. Thus this continuation of Africa is crucial to the role of these 300 million. It was just 300 million. It was only after slavery that Africa could be divided by colonial powers. They didn't divide Africa until 1884, 1885 in Berlin. Thus the slave trade and colonialism are one and the same, and must be properly understood. Unless you understand this, you will not understand this revolutionary process that Africa must now undergo to arrive at her continental unification, which she will arrive at. Now we said that it was stopped by capitalism, therefore just to get there, we must fight against capitalism. And we must fight against capitalism in every aspect. And of course, the most crucial aspect is the cultural aspect. Because each people have their culture, and their ideology for their struggle comes from their culture. This understanding has a lot to do, first of all, with the struggle for Africa and her continental unity. We said that she must be anti-capitalist. If she's anti-capitalist, it means she can only be socialist. Because there are only two economic systems in the world, capitalism or socialism. That's all. There are no others. And there can only be two because every economic system must answer one fundamental question. Who will own and control the wealth of the country? Who will own and control the means of production? The question can only be answered two ways. Either a few will own or everybody will own. It's as simple as that. In America, where a few people own, they try to justify the right of a few people to own everything. But no matter how they have to justify it, the fact is there. When a few people own everything, these pigs who own oil will send you to spill your blood so they can get more oil and become richer. Capitalism is a backward system. And thus it must be clear here that if Africa is anti-capitalist, she must be socialist. Now we must do some discussion with socialism because many of our people are confused on it. In the first instance, we know many are confused because they know absolutely nothing about it. Just because they live in America, you know America, the people in America are the most politically ignorant people on the face of the earth. I live outside of America. You know, when a revolutionary regime seizes power, they burn all reactionary books. They ban all reactionary magazines. When a reactionary group seizes power, they burn all revolutionary books. They ban all revolutionary magazines. But in America, they ain't got to burn or ban nothing. They leave the library. You don't need it. You ain't got to worry about you. Matter of fact, you don't even read history books. If you don't get on television, you ain't gonna look for it. so we know the people in America are just ignorant, get ignorant, made arrogant into ignorance, and since the system is racist, when it comes to us, it's double dose of ignorance. I mean, so just when we say we have to struggle against this system, we mean in every aspect. And the aspect that we must struggle against is in the aspect of its ideas. The socialism must come to be properly understood. We know nothing about it, and yet we take positions against it. One man told me, well, you know, the reason I'm against socialism is because it comes out of Europe. Who told you that? I mean, who told you it came out of Europe? Just like some people think that Christianity came out of Europe because Jesus Christ is painted white.
The Palestinian.
Yes. So everyone is getting confused everywhere. No. Socialism can't come out of Europe. Socialism is a universal truth. The laws of gravity are called Newton's laws in America. But you can't think that Newton invented that the body falls at the rate of 32 feet per second squared. Newton cannot invent that. The best we can say about Newton is that he is an astute observer. That's all. If I'm in Timbuktu doing any experiment with the laws of gravity, I come to the exact same conclusion that Newton came to, that a body in motion tends to stay in motion unless stopped by an outside force. Newton cannot invent this. Karl Marx cannot invent socialism. It's a universal truth. The best we can give him is an astute observer. But any man, any woman, if I'm sitting in the desert of Libya in North Africa looking at the relationship between capital and labor, I will come to the exact same conclusion of Karl Marx, that wherever capital tries to dominate labor, there will be a ruthless struggle against capital by labor until labor comes to smash capital and dominate it. My people's history showed me that in America. We smashed chattel slavery, which was nothing but capital covering labor. And this slave labor rose up and smashed it. So the laws of socialism are for everybody. Karl Marx's great contribution to humanity was not in the area of socialism. His real contribution was in the area of dialectical and historical materialism. But since they don't want you to know nothing about that, they don't even mention it. Yes, but you must go and look at dialectical materialism and historical materialism. We say Karl Marx could not invent. As a matter of fact, if you will do some reading, you will see there was a brother by the name of Ibn Khaldun who lived in Tunisia in the 11th century. And if you will go and read any of his books, I mean, if you just take Paris translated, it's in your library. If you will go and just, you know, we have people, we can dance. You know, I got nothing against dancing, but we should just dance over the library. You know, we need to read as a people, seriously. We need to read, seriously. Ibn Khaldun has the same terms that Marx has: surplus labor, origins of the state, origins of private property. And he wrote in the 11th century AD. And he was an African writing out of Tunisia. Consequently, once you know your history, don't get confused. Socialism is a universal concept. As a matter of fact, the very values of socialism come from communalism. And communalism rested in Africa very, 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 very long. As a matter of fact, if one will look properly at these values of communalism and socialism, one will see that Africa has the chance at being quickly arrive at a unified socialist continent. Because communalism rested a long time, capitalism never had a foothold in our continent. And feudalism never reached to the terroristic aspects it's reached other areas. Thus, these communistic aspects of our values are still prevalent, and we will show it to you as we discuss more and more. Thus, we must understand what Pan-Africanism is. Pan-Africanism is an objective. The objective is a unified socialist continent. This objective was an evolutionary objective, us moving to unify our continent. It was stopped by capitalism. In order for it to continue, it can only continue as a revolutionary anti-capitalist movement imposing the economic system of socialism upon the African continent. Thus, you have a clear understanding of this scientifically, not based on anybody's thinking. So, Pan-Africanism is not an ideology, it's an objective. It can be achieved. Our ideology must come from our culture, and our culture certainly is different from others, because each people, using their own intelligence, finding themselves in any other area of the world, using the natural forces there, come to try to adjust life to make it amenable for human living, just like in every other society. So, the cultural form is different, but in essence, it's all the same. Each people trying to make the forces of nature adaptable to the best possible living conditions. It's as simple as that. We say everybody will have different aspects of their culture. Let me give you an example. If you will look at the culture of Europe and the culture of Africa on the relationship to religion, you will find big differences. Of course, once you look at the history of Africa, you come to see and understand these differences. Africa's relationships with religions and Africa's relationship with spirituality is almost one and the same. I mean, the African people are very spiritual people, so much so that today they are more religious than just about any other people. I mean, they're more religious than those who gave them religions. I mean, it can be seen in our life. We are more enthusiastic about religion than we are about any other aspect of our life. I say jokingly all the time, but of course it has a serious base. If on any given Sunday, just in America alone, I could collect the energy that we give off at church services, put them all together, and direct them against the enemy, we would have been freed yesterday. If you look at our people, you'll see we are very enthusiastic about religion. But this has a lot to do with our culture. Africa gave monotheism to the world, belief in one God. It was given to the world by Africa. Africa gave Judaism to the world. It was given to the world by Africa. Yes, you must know the first Jews in the world were Africans. You have to know this. It's your history. And I'm not going to send you to Dr. Ben. No, if you think he's crazy, I'm going to send you to Sigmund Freud. His last book, Moses and Monotheism, he documents it for you using historical, archaeological, and psychoanalysis proofs, among others. So it's there. Of course, the first Jews in the world were Africans. Since Africa gave monotheism to the world, and it was the only place where it was being practiced, the first monotheistic religion cannot develop outside of Africa. I don't care what reasons they give for getting into Africa to make their religion. I'm not confused. I know it has to come from Africa, and I know the first Jews in the world were Africans. Africa's contribution to Christianity, of course, everybody knows is overwhelming. The first country mentioned in the Bible is, we don't even read, so even though enthusiastic about religion, we don't even read our Bible. No, you find it everywhere in the house, on the table, in the living room, in the bathroom. Read it. That's what, you don't have to read the Bible to be a Christian. Of course, but if you can read, you're a Christian. You don't read it, you're a stupid Christian. Africa's contributions to Christianity are outstanding, overwhelming. I mean, the first country, Genesis 2, verse 13, is Ethiopia. Your version of the Bible, we have it as Cush. C-U-S-H or K-U-S-H, it's the same name for Ethiopia. When Jesus Christ was in trouble, peace be upon his name, it was Africa that protected him, nowhere else in the world. It was Africa where he grew up as a youth. Of course, these are facts. I mean, it's all there for you to see, but anyway, it's your history, you should know it. Africa saved Islam for the world. When the Prophet Muhammad was being hounded by the feudal lords of Mecca, the disciples found refuge in Africa, where they were kept guarded until the Prophet, peace be upon his name, was called to Medina, and the Ethiopians conducted the disciples to rejoin him there, where once having rejoined him, they spread Islam rapidly throughout the world. We have just in passing given you some of Africa's relationships to world religions. We haven't spoken about African religions itself, which are inside of Africa. We've spoken of those which had an effect on world civilization, such as monotheism, belief in one God, which Africa gave to the world, Judaism, which Africa gave to the world, Christianity, which Africa stabilized for the world, and Islam, which Africa saved for the world at a time of danger. Michael Aflaq, the leader of the Ba'ath Party, Michael Aflaq, you ought to read. Leader of the Ba'ath Party, that's the party of Saddam Hussein. He points out that he's a profound writer, profound thinker, and a profound revolutionary activist. He points out that Europe has never produced any universal religions, not one. All the religions entered Europe from the outside. In the case of Christianity, it took 400 years, that's 4 centuries, after the death of Jesus Christ, for Christianity to stabilize itself in Europe. So you can just look and see, and if you will look at the history of Africa and the history of Europe in relationships to religious intolerance, you will find that Africa is dominantly tolerant of religious indifferences, and Europe is dominantly intolerant of religious differences. In Europe, they burn you at the stake if you're a Jew, if you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you're a non-believer. As a matter of fact, even as late as the 14th and 15th century, many of the Europeans who fled to this country were fleeing religious persecution. So you must understand the long history, and if you just take a look at Europe's history, you will see even most of her class struggles were covered with histories of religious, and make you think it's a religious warfare. Even today, some people really think the struggle in Northern Ireland is a struggle between Protestants and Catholics, and not the real issue, British imperialism occupying the land of the Irish people for over 800 years. Thus, the relationship of culture and religion in Africa and Europe must be definitely different. We give some examples in direct relationships to our struggle for socialism, which we repeat is a universal truth and cannot be given by anyone. European revolutionaries have made errors just like everybody. Of course, one of the errors they make is in this era of racism. One of the reasons for it is that because of Europe's dominant position of power, because of Europe's dominant position of power, we want to repeat the words so people don't get carried away and think that we have any other solution except one, to get power. The only reason Europe dominates us is not because they think they're white supremacists, because they have the power to do it. And our only problem is that we don't have the power. I don't care what a white man thinks. I don't care how supremacist he is. They ain't got no problem with me. If a white man wants to lynch me, that's his problem. If he got the power to lynch me, that's my problem. So, I know my problem. So my problem at this stage in human development is not to try and treat him and his white supremacy. My problem at this stage in human development is to find enough power to stop him from whatever he wants to do to my people. After we have the power and we arrive at the power, then we can begin to treat him as a psychiatrist or psychologist. But until we get power and stop him, we're wasting time tripping off, trying to psychoanalysis him and this and that. We need power, because the only reason we oppress is because we lack power. If you will look, Europe has this tendency, because of its power, position, accrued, of course, illegally, racist, immorally, etc., to make it appear as if things which are particular to Europe is universal to the world. So much so, as a matter of fact, if you look at history and you don't do proper research on it, you come to think that nothing happens until the white man comes along. Like in America, they say Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. I know some of us who are conscious say it's not true, but very few of us who are conscious, knowing it's not true, look at the history of America before 1492. So you must not think it doesn't have an effect upon you. You just shake it off. No. If you say Columbus did not discover America before 1492, then you have a responsibility to know about this country before 1492. And when you do, you'll have a great respect for the Indians. I mean serious respect for them. Because even if you go back before 1492, you got to go to slavery. And if you do even anything in slavery, you will know that we Africans must be eternally grateful to the indigenous people of this country. Because when the white people were making this a hunting ground for slaves, the only sanctuary we could find was on the Indian reservation. So all of these concepts are made to fight you. That's why your culture has to be important. You must know your culture. And the only way you can know your culture is by having a proper comprehension of your history. Thus, unless you know your history, you cannot talk about your culture. But merely knowing your history doesn't mean you know your culture. Because your history can be given to you by your enemy. And depending upon how it's taken from you, you can become confused. I mean, I give examples all the time. I said, and I know, that the Africans in this country smashed chattel slavery. I know we did it. Now, every way they present it, it won't look that way. Now, I'm not even going to argue the analysis. I'm just going to give you cold facts. The Civil War started in 1861. Abraham Lincoln did not sign the Emancipation Proclamation until 1863, 2 years after the war began. Why? Because the North was losing the war. That's the only reason why. If the war was fought over the question of slavery, in 1861, when the first bullet was fired, every slave would have been freed. But he had no intentions of freeing the slaves. I know they tell you he's a great white father. I understand. Supposed to, because we can't do nothing ourselves. Everything's done for us by a great white father. So in our history, we have nothing but great white fathers. Even now, they want to make the clerk a great white father. I mean, they don't stop anywhere, these people. They really. Yeah. So Lincoln started a fight. When he freed the slaves in 1863, dig this, he didn't let them pick up guns. Frederick Douglass wore his feet out, going to the White House begging Lincoln to let the slaves pick up the gun. But Lincoln refused. He didn't let the slaves pick up the gun until 1864. And when we picked up the gun, this war, which started in 1861, was ended in 9 months. 9 months. Now, if you don't think the slaves did it, you must be crazy, but I know my people. You give me a gun to get Mr. Charles, who's been whooping my mama before me, give me that gun. As a matter of fact, the white South knew who won the war. That's why after the Hayes Children Compromise, they did everything to disarm the Africans and write terrorist groups against any one of us who were armed. That's where your Ku Klux Klan started, because they knew that these Africans giving guns on even Stephen, we got them hands down. This is our people's culture, so me, I know it. That's why when people talk nonsense, I'm never pessimistic. These Africans, what they've been through with nothing and got as far as they got to, nothing gonna stop them from where they got to go. We are speaking of our culture and of Pan-Africanism. So we said if you look at both continents, you will see the relationship to religion is different. Thus, Marxism-Leninism can say, as Marx and Engels say in the Communist Manifesto, that religion is the opium of the masses. He's correct for Europe. Because we said every religion enters Europe from the outside, and Europe now tries to control this religion, to nationalize it, and make it look as if it belongs to them. I mean, when you hear people talking about Christianity, you think it came out of Europe. I mean, you really think it came out of Europe. You think Europe was the breeding ground for it, rather than the continent that tried most to destroy Christianity. I mean, these are just historical facts. When you look at some of these people like Sharon, you really think that they're Jews, and you really think that Judaism comes out of Europe. Judaism didn't come out of Europe, it came out of Africa. I mean, these are just facts. So they can say that Marxism is the opium of the people, and they can even discuss atheism openly. As a matter of fact, when the Soviet Union had its socialist revolution, they claimed atheism is a state religion. Now, atheism doesn't say you don't believe in God. Atheism says God does not exist. You must know properly the difference. Now, because of European culture, because of its historical development in relation to religion, we say they can discuss atheism. But in Africa, you can't discuss atheism. In Africa, the people are believers. They are deep believers. And not only are they deep believers, their religion has not been alienated from their struggle for freedom, as in Europe. Their religion has been part and parcel of their struggle for their liberation. I mean, Martin Luther King was a minister. Don't forget, so was Malcolm X. And so wherever you go, you will see hand in hand, religions are used as a means of opposing the devil. In the area under discussion now, where war is going on, the Muslims there use their religion as a powerful weapon against the enemy. So in Europe, where religion has been used as the opium of the masses, this is not true for other areas outside of the world. We are just giving you clear examples of why you must have a clear understanding of your culture, and that you must know your ideology comes from your culture, and you cannot take the ideology of others to be yours. For a long time, we have been saying that we were not Marxist-Leninists. We were attacked. The reason we were attacked is because they thought that Marxism-Leninism and socialism meant the same thing. And not only that, the only way you could arrive at socialism was through Marxism-Leninism. And many people had this discussion with. I remember as a young man in Vietnam with its top leadership. When discussing, they said, well, comrade, Marxism-Leninism is the only way. I would tell them, well, I must be honest with you. I have certainly read it. I have studied it. I know it. I keep studying it. I will study until I die, because I know Marx, Lenin, and Engels were great men. But somehow, honestly, with you, I cannot tell you that I accept it as part of me. Though I know I'm as revolutionary as any Marxist is. We've been fighting it for a long time. We said, we've been called reactionary and counter-revolutionary. But we knew that Marxism didn't come from our culture. We knew it instinctively. Matter of fact, even the errors of the Communist Party, USA, in this country, organizing the South, showed it. When they went to the South to organize, they tried to tell the people that not believing in God was a fundamental aspect of the struggle for freedom. Do you know the only place they could organize was in the church? That's the only place they could organize. Even when I went to the South in the 1960s, the only place we could organize was in the church. Could you imagine me in the church telling the people that before we fight, we must deny the existence of God? Those old people that used to tell me, son, if God is not leading this movement, we ain't going nowhere. Yeah. I would see old people on the line getting ready to go to church, 62 years. I said, Miss Davis, you going to jail? Yes, son. I said, you too old. Don't worry. I got a telephone in my bosom. As soon as they touch me, I'm going to call God. He's going to take care of everything. Yeah. So that's what the people would say. How can you tell these people that to go to jail, you should take out the telephone from your bosom? No. Don't you need another telephone to get a direct call to God when you go to jail, Miss Davis? Yes. We have to use religion in the fight, not try to fight it. We show here again the cultural differences so we can see it clearly. That's why a people must understand their culture. And our culture is nothing but African culture. It's been in struggle against American imperialist culture. And we haven't stopped struggling. The only time we become African Americans is when we stop struggling. That's the only time. But America is Africa's enemy. Has been and must be until it's transformed from the vicious system that it is. I mean, it bombed Libya for no reason at all. Libya's in Africa, you know. It It supports every terrorist regime. It supports Botha. It supports de Klerk. It doesn't support the ANC. It doesn't support the Pan-Africanist Congress. It doesn't support the fighting masses of our people. It supports the oppressors. America is not only our enemy, but the enemy of all of humanity. That's why we must be clear about our culture. Now let me show you how you can bring your problems. Just give you some areas now. I want to give you one other area. We have a lot of conflict with these Marxist-Leninists over the question of nationalism. As a matter of fact, they used to call us racist, chauvinist, narrow nationalist, all sorts of terms. But that great son of Africa, Ture, told them clearly, when you go from a nation to a state, as was the case of Europe, nationalism is dominantly negative. When you go from a state to a nation, as is the case of Africa and the colonized countries just arriving at freedom, nationalism is positive. They got confused themselves with this aspect of historical and dialectical materialism, the thing we talked about by Marx. Marx says that everything has positive and negative in it. Everything. I mean, even you. You have a tendency to cheat, and you have a tendency to be honest. I mean, cheat in school, cheat on whoever you want to cheat on, you understand? Or be honest to them. All of us have this tendency. And depending upon how well disciplined we are, one lies dominant over the other. They're never equal. I mean, these are principles, so there's no middle ground. There's no gray area. Either you cheat on your lover, or you're honest to your lover. Ain't no middle ground. Simple as that. When you recount a story, either you lie or you tell the truth. Ain't no middle ground. And when your people are oppressed, either you're fighting for them, or by your very act of inactivity, you are against them. There is no middle ground. You must understand it properly. So in these principles here, we have no middle ground at all, none whatsoever. And that's why we must come to know properly our culture, and we cannot have compromises with our culture. That's why to speak about African American is to speak about our nomenclature that doesn't exist. The culture of European imperialism is to suffocate Africa. Therefore, we must know properly our culture. If you would look at it, this question, Marx says that there's always something dominant and something negative. And nationalism itself, not only that, but the thing itself at some points can be negative and sometimes can be positive. On the one condition, you can be a cheater. On another condition, the same cheater can be a good person. I mean, the beauty of this is understanding people like Malcolm X and seeing that you have nothing to worry about. I mean, Malcolm X was a drain in our community. Malcolm X was a criminal element in our community. He went to jail, and in jail, he went from being dominantly negative to being dominantly positive into such a position that he became a sterling revolutionary, giving examples of people all over the world. That's why I'm not worried about our brothers. We got 25% of our brothers in jail. That's good. That's at least 10% Malcolm X if all 25 don't make it. You know, so we're not worried about nothing. We got to put hands down. Our culture shows us that. Oh, we got so much drugs in the community. You know nothing. The Chinese whooped them with opium, cracking opium, and that was in the 1890s. Give me a break. Wake up. You're fighting a war. This is a war. You don't cry when you're fighting a war. When a man is dead, you don't cry. If a man gets shot by a police, that's war. If a man died with drugs, that's war. When a man gets crippled in school, that's war. When somebody gets put out of bad housing, that's war. When you get crippled in the hospital because of bad medicine, that's war. Then you go into religion, they got a white Jesus when he never saw Europe, that's war. We fight war in every level against the system. That's why we must be conscious and stop crying when the system touches us. If you don't want to wage war, get out the way. You understand? But they're war. I'm trying to kill them. So if they kill me, I ain't got nothing to say. You understand? They're supposed to. Matter of fact, Secretary says, if the enemy is not doing anything against you, you are not doing anything. Matter of fact, anytime they stop doing something against me, I worry. Every day they're supposed to be doing something against me because every day I'm trying to destroy them consciously. And it's through the culture that we will do it. So this aspect shows us something is positive, something is negative. So Secretary shows that nationalism in Europe, where they've had nations for centuries, now going to state structure, is in fact dominantly negative. But in Africa, where they come divide the country between the British, the French, the Germans, the Spanish, the Italians, you know all of them, and they create something, and it's called a nation, when in fact it's not a nation, just a state, and you get independence with a state structure. You now have to give nationalism to those people. I mean, look at Iraq. Iraq was created in World War I. Before that it wasn't there, it had Kuwait part of it. Now they create Kuwait. Now Kuwait got to get a Kuwaiti nationalism. So when you go from these countries, nationalism is positive. So for us, it's positive. And you know, everywhere we go, we're nationalists, and they tell you, no, nationalism is no good, you know, but it must come from your culture. We want to show you just 3 quick examples before we conclude, just so you the necessity of this culture, of its relationship even in struggles today. You know, the FBI, they're pigs, you know that. I mean, they're serious pigs. And you mustn't even look at their relationship with me, because me, I'm trying to kill them, you understand? That's what I'm supposed to do. I know the enemies of my people, you understand? I know the enemies of my people, you understand? And with the enemies of my people, I give them no slack, Jack. I fight them without pity and without mercy, because they kill my people without pity and without mercy. They're my enemies. I don't even ask you to look at what they do to me. You go and see what they did to Martin Luther King. I mean, you say you love King and you still moment. I love King. What about the FBI? Well, I think they're doing a good job. You don't know nothing about King. Matter of fact, most people don't know nothing about King. Most of us have maybe read 2 books that King wrote himself. Most of us. All we know about King is what the television tells us about King. That's why we think that one of his best speeches is I Have a Dream. If you knew King, you'd be reading Why I Opposed the War in Vietnam, making sure everybody knows. And you would make sure everybody knows the speech, so we don't even know King, you understand? We don't study, but we must if we want to free our people. And we will, because we don't free our people. When the FBI was destroying the movement because our movement was not organized in the 60s, it was a spontaneous movement, which it is to this day. Our movement has not been transformed to an organized movement. And those of us who are serious revolutions, this is where we have been gearing our energies since the 60s, to transforming this spontaneous movement to an organized movement, because we know we can win. I mean, if you look at the Watts Rebellion in 1965, you understand? This rebellion was spontaneous. The Africans didn't plan it. One night, the police beat one brother. It was one too much. Everybody decided at the same night, let's get them. I mean, they rose up, Jack, and they pushed the police, backed them up against the wall, stopped the National Guard. And these Africans didn't plan it. They just did it spontaneously. Do you know what we will do when we properly plan it? When we properly organize? Yes, we who want revolution want planning. And you can't plan unless you are organized. Because our people are still unorganized. And the enemy knows this. Even when the movement of the 60s came, he said, wow, they that wise. I said, just step back, leave them alone. It's spontaneous, it'll spin out. And once it spin out, he came back with his guns and his boots to push us further back than where we came out of. That's the laws of struggle. That's the laws of struggle. And of course, the enemy will try to bring confusion. And one of the confusion they tried to bring here was, they came with a thing called gay and lesbian liberation. Now, we are the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. You understand? So we watched the development, we saw where it came from, we looked at it, we kept our distance from it. After a while, everybody was involved in it. The Communist Party was involved in it, the Socialist Party was supporting it, Jesse Jackson was speaking before them. Everybody, you understand? We kept our distance. By the early 70s, they really had some power, and they had everybody in their line, so they demanded to have a meeting with us. We don't mind meeting with them. We don't have no fight with them. I'm a revolutionary. I don't fight nobody who ain't got power. Me, I'm fighting for political power. If you ain't got it, I'm not going to waste my time with you. The bullets I got is for those who got power, so once I take them out, I can take some power. So I don't fight nobody who ain't got no power. So that's a waste of time. If you look at our party, we're attacked by just about everybody. We don't waste. What you attack him for? He ain't got it. If he thinks you got power, let him attack you. He ain't got no power, and he ain't got none, so don't waste time attacking him. So I know those people who came, they didn't have no power, they came to attack us, They just, everybody's supporting gay liberation movement except your party. So that's right. And you say you're a revolutionary party, we most certainly are. And all the other revolutionary parties, the Communist Party, the Socialist Party, all the revolutionary parties supported. Your party's not. I said, that's correct. Well, you're not supported. Why? I said, we know why. We didn't give a chance. They started just invectives against us. Macho, this, that. Oh, they talked all sorts. We let them talk. There's one thing about King we understand is that you can be nonviolent, especially with those who ain't got power. I mean, nonviolent, but it don't cost nothing, you understand? The Quran says a smile can stop a war. And the Bible says a gentle word can turn away wrath. You understand? So we know they're not our enemy. Even if they think we're the enemy, we know they're not the enemy. You don't need to let them go have false solutions. So after they finish, we told them, listen, We are the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. We examine everything we do from the basis of our people's culture. Nowhere else. That's the basis of our struggle. We know that the problem of homosexuality and intolerance of homosexuality is a serious problem in the white community. But in the African community, we are not intolerant to homosexuality. You will go throughout our community. You will find no intolerance to it. And there are homosexuals throughout our communities. We're quite tolerant, so we don't have this problem. Like I told them, you don't know nothing about our history. Even Malcolm X was praising James Baldwin, so you better get out of the way if you try to bring confusion to our community. We know our culture. We're not saying that you may not find somebody bashing in the head of a homosexual here and there, but that's an isolated incident. It's not the dominant aspect of our culture. And we have enough problems. Don't you come and give us problems where they don't exist. You do have a problem in the European community with the intolerant aspect of homosexuality, yes. But everyone knows the cultural basis of Africa has always been dominantly tolerant. As a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons we're in the position we find ourselves in today. So, from your culture, you don't get confused. Your culture, you know. I'll give you one other example of this aspect of our cultural basis now. You know, Africa produced the first queens in the world. The first queens in the world were produced by Africa. And these were not play queens. They were queens with full power. I mean, you got to find European imperialism everywhere, in television and movies, on commercials. I mean, you know, these pigs will actually go and bring up a Cleopatra and make Elizabeth Taylor play the part. And make it appear as if she came from Greece. If you take a look at Greek and their great democracy and the highest spirit of their life, you will find two groups who oppressed there, women and slaves. As a matter of fact, when you read Greek history, you don't find your woman's name up in there unless they put her as a god, made her a pedestal, and got her out the way. Otherwise, you don't see it. But Africa's history, you will read women everywhere. First queens of the world came from Africa. And not only that, Henry Clark, he shows us that whenever a queen was on the throne and there was an invasion in Africa, there was no compromise at all. Well, brother was on the throne. But we're talking about sisters. Anyway, we said that Africa gave the first queens to the world, and if you will look at African women today, you will see they're oppressed even by their men. I mean, the level of oppression by their men is from the physical to the ideological. On every level, they're oppressed. On every level. But the one place men cannot oppress African women is on the front lines fighting for African men. If you know nothing about our history, you will know the names of our great heroes who fought for us. If you know nothing about African history, you will know the name of Nzinga. You'll have heard of Yahya Santue. You'll have heard of Harriet Tubman. You will know of Sojourner Truth. You will know of Rosa Parks. You will know of Fannie Lou Hamer. You will know of Gloria Richardson. You will know of Uduri Doris Smith Robinson. You will know of Angela Davis. You will know of Santa Shanku. Because if you will look at our history, you will see that our women have played a particular role in our struggle for our liberation. Even though oppressed by us, they're on the front lines fighting for us. Thus, based on our culture, our relationship to our women is entirely different from others. I mean, it makes it easier for me as a brother to bring brothers to their senses. Look, brother, we sit on these sisters, and even while sitting on them, they fighting the enemy. You understand? All we gotta do is get up, sit back down, leave them by themselves. They take care of the enemy for us. You understand? Here, from your own culture, you can begin clearly to use your culture to advance your struggle for liberation. This is why we as a people must look at our culture. And we must come to know our culture. And the first thing we must notice, not only is our culture different from American capitalist culture, it is in total conflict with it all the time. All the time. It's only when we get this aspect of it that we know it. A people who are oppressed can only make history by fighting for their freedom. A people who are oppressed can only make history by fighting against their oppressor. Anytime you fight with the oppressor, you're making the history of the oppressor and rendering yourself weaker. We said you have to fight capitalism everywhere. In the movies, with Cleopatra on the television, even in commercials. I mean, the capitalist system doesn't lie some of the time. It lies all of the time. If you don't fight commercials, you can end up in Arabia, Saudi Arabia, on a desert because you want to be all you can be. Thus, this aspect of fighting the system must be properly understood. It is these communal aspects of our values which may assure us of the rapid advancement of our people towards socialism based on our people's struggle. We have a very tolerant people in our value system. You know, any African who mates with any other race, the offspring of that child will find complete ease in the African community. Complete and total ease. No problem at all. So we must come to look properly at our culture. And the most important thing you must know about our culture is that we are a struggling people. We are a struggling people. If you don't know this from your culture, just look at your people's history. Of course, we understand that since our ideology comes from our culture, listen to our statement carefully, an African only have an ideology coming from his culture. In the early 70s, I met a brother, an African, who informed me that he was a Maoist, following the line of Mao Zedong's thought. Now let me tell you, Mao Zedong is a great man. Let me tell you, Mao Zedong is a great man, for whom I have the greatest deal of admiration and respect, and of whom I assure you will bring the Chinese masses through the thoughts of Mao Zedong to their proper victory, which of course is inevitable. This man told me he was a Maoist. He said, what are you? I said, well, you know me, I'm just saying Kwame Ture. And Kwame Ture is Kwame Nkrumah? I said, yeah. He said, what Kwame Nkrumah do? You see what Mao did? Mao unified China. Mao took capitalism out of China. Mao destroyed feudalism. Mao entrenched socialism in China. What did Kwame Nkrumah do? I told him. Kwame Nkrumah says, you don't judge a people by the heights they've achieved, but the depths from which they've come. I told him that all Mao Zedong had to fight against was Japanese imperialism and Chinese feudalism. If in Africa all we had to do was fight against one imperialism and African feudalism, we would have been a unified socialist continent. But Africa has had to fight against the French, the Germans, the Spanish, the Italians, the Portuguese, the Belgians, the Dutch, the Swedes, and America all at the same time. So if Mao had to fight against all these forces at the same time, I'm sure he wouldn't have got where he got. You must know your people's history and their culture. It is from this history and this culture that I know victory is inevitable. Because if these people, having nothing, have fought against all these powers, back them up against the wall, you understand? With nothing, now today that they got where they got, ain't nothing gonna keep them from going where they got to go to get their freedom. Our people will be free. Of this there isn't the slightest question. In conclusion, since we look at the culture and we repeat it, the only way we can know our culture is by studying it and by being involved in the people's struggle. Both of them must come at the same time. Don't let capitalism confuse you. You can't think about something unless you're involved in it. You can't think about basketball unless you play it. I know looking at television you can criticize all the basketball players. But unless you take basketball, you can't think about basketball. If you don't study physics, you can't think about physics. And if you don't struggle for your people's unity, you can't think about your people's unity. The only way you can think about something is when you're involved in the struggle of that thing. And if you want your people united, you can't think about your people's unity unless you're involved in the struggle to unite your people. So when we say here that we need to think about our culture, the only way we can think about it is when we are involved in it, used as a weapon to advance our people. The only way people can study their culture is when they are organized. The only way people can use their culture properly as a weapon is when they are organized. It is clear that even those of us who come now to fight to use our culture as a struggle, which we must, as a weapon in our struggle, which we must, we have to use it from an organized basis. Of course, the organized aspect of the community worldwide is very small. To put it lightly, 96% of the African masses worldwide do not belong to any organization fighting for them. 96%. You know, if the NAACP had 96% of the masses of people inside the NAACP, that organization would change tremendously. That organization would change tremendously. Thus, the attack is not against the organizations, the attack is against the capitalist system to push our people into organizations to liberate themselves. You must understand precisely here. We know that 96% of our people do not belong to organizations. Our fight is not with them. We know why they're not in the 96, why they're not in the organizations. It's because of capitalism. The South fight is against capitalism to help liberate these people, bring them into the struggle so they play their proper role. You must get a clear understanding. And that's where your culture plays such a crucial position. And the culture in America is becoming more and more alienated, a lot less. I remember in 1968 when I did a workshop in Mississippi, I made a statement that, Africans and Americans have different culture completely, even their language is different. They call me racist. I said, no, not only is it different, I said it's going to get more different. It's going to get more alienated. They call me a racist. But today, I'm certain that it's difficult for most white people to understand a rap record the first time around. And I'm sure even after listening to it several times, they still can't hear it. They got to slow down the speed before they can hear what's going on. So if you look very carefully, our culture is not coming closer, it's becoming more alienated. More Africans in America are going to affirm African culture in America than ever before. Not only by clothes, not only by songs, but even by discipline and by their commitment to their people through getting into organizations. It is only our culture that will liberate us. It is only our culture that will advance us. It's only our culture that will guarantee us eternal development. And the only way we get our culture is by being organized. So we start off where Sister Imani left off. If you want to advance your people, if you really want them to unite, if you're tired of the drugs in your community, if you're tired of all the nonsense in your community, the only way you can get rid of it is by understanding your culture in the organization which you belong and waging a struggle from there. One thing you must know about the African culture, there's no role for individuals in it. One thing you must know about the African culture, there's no roles for individuals in it. The African culture is a communal culture, and not only a communal culture, but a mass culture. So much so that even when they speak of our political movements, they always refer to them as mass movements. This is what we do unconsciously. That is to say, if you will even look at the world, and you will find wherever socialism is being built, it's being built by a vanguard party. Africa gave mass party to the world. Thus, even in our culture has transcended itself into the political arena where we speak of the necessity for a mass party. Thus, if you know anything about your people's struggle, you know your people only advance through mass struggle. As a matter of fact, if you don't know anything about the history of the people in the world, you know just America, the statement I make is a correct statement. No individual African advances in this country based on their own worth or talents and abilities, but in fact advance only on the blood of the masses of their people. As a matter of fact, the statement can be made properly. We as a people make no advancement unless we shed blood. I mean, even to sit in a filthy 5 and 10 cent store, you got to shed your blood. To sit on the bus where everybody else sits, so you pay the same money, you got to shed your blood. If you got money right now in New Jersey and you want to live wherever you want to live and you're African, you got to shed your blood. Even to get your children to state schools where you pay taxes like everybody else, you got to shed your blood. And to get the most sacred aspect of their democracy, the vote, you got to shed your blood. Nobody sitting here can show me one advancement we as a people have made in this country, even individual, where we didn't shed our blood. And they try to make it individual advancement as if it's making history. This was the first African in such and such an area. Here's another first one. This is the first one to do. Come on. These people come out of the struggles of people. Even this traitor, Colin Powell, he didn't get there based on his power. It's a result of the struggles of people. It's a result of the struggles of people. And he even got there directly because of Martin Luther King. Because King came to demobilize the Africans in the U.S. Army. To confuse us, they put Powell there to let you think you got power when you ain't got no power, just like they put Dinkins there and a whole lot of... Matter of fact, they ain't got nothing but Bantu stands in America. That's all they are, they're Bantu stands. You think that they got an international system. We're the only ones who don't hook up Pan-African. It's Bantu. That's all. It's a Bantu stand. Dinkins ain't nothing but a Bantu leader. That's all it is. As a matter of fact, he's such a Bantu leader that he worries about the suffering in Tel Aviv more than the suffering in Johannesburg. even though he uses Mandela as a god for himself and can't use any Israeli as a god for himself. When Mandela come here and do everything for Mandela just try to fool the people, but even Abraham Lincoln told him, some of the time, Jack, but not all the time. And as they get more conscious, it's less of the time. All right, so you know the solution, organization, the basis of our culture. The objective is Pan-Africanism, the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. Until Africa is free, no African anywhere in the world will be free. Let's get up, let's organize, and free ourselves. Thank you.